So number 5, jumping to conclusions. And this is a fun one. You make a negative interpretation even though there are no definite facts that convincingly support your conclusion. And there's 2 of them. Mind reading, you arbitrarily conclude that someone is reacting negatively to you and you don't bother to check it out. The fortune-telling error, you anticipate that things will turn out badly and you feel convinced that your prediction is an already established fact. Jumping to conclusions is the most exercise I got all day. Maybe a funny little saying, but it really isn't a funny little distortion. How many of you have guessed why a friend isn't calling you back and you've been wrong? Many times, right? Many, many times. Well, that's mind reading. Now, if you go on and say, they're not calling me back because I think they're working with a competitor of mine, they don't want to work with me anymore. Now, that's fortune telling. Suppose I'm giving this lecture and Bob is sitting over here and he's nodding off. Right? And I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm boring the hell out of him. And then I look around and I see several of you with the same look as Bob. Is that possible? And I start to think, oh my gosh, I really am. I really am boring the hell out of these people. Now I just read all of your minds, and now I'm going to go on further and say, it's because this lecture is boring, or that I'm a boring lecture. That's fortune telling, isn't it? How was I supposed to know he had a brand new puppy? Or a wife that kept him up all night last night? Jeez, Bob, you gotta be careful there. All right, number 6, magnification, catastrophizing, or minimization. You exaggerate the importance of things such as your goof up or someone else's achievement, or you inappropriately shrink things until they appear tiny, your own desirable qualities or the other fellow's imperfections. This is called the binocular trick. It's called the binocular trick because you're either blowing things out of proportion or you're shrinking or minimizing them. So when you look at your own errors or your imperfections, you're going to blow them out of proportion. And a good example of minimization is, I think I gave a really good speech last week because I was really on. And, I think I was just lucky that day. Instead of thinking, I really know this stuff. And, I spent a lot of time practicing. And an example of catastrophizing is thinking, since my best client is leaving me, the others are going to follow, and my profits are going to go straight to hell, and I'm going to lose the company, I'm going to have to file bankruptcy, and I'll lose, and I will end up in a van down by the river. You're getting the idea. Yeah. Yes, you can. So magnifying your negatives and minimizing your positives and not owning the goodness of who you are is going to really alter your view of self and your view of the world. We're at number 7, emotional reasoning. You assume that your negative emotions necessarily reflect the way things really are. I feel it, therefore it must be true. This is one of my favorite ones, and we're going to spend a lot more time on it a little bit later. But let me explain to you what it is. I feel it, therefore it must be true. The emotions of sadness, anger, angst, whatever it is that you're feeling are real. Because they're real. You're feeling it. So my troubles must be real. My misery must be real, right? Emotional reasoning plays a role in nearly all of our depressions. Because things feel so negatively to you, you assume that they truly are. It doesn't occur to you to question, to challenge the validity of the thoughts that you had that gives you the negative emotions. We're all, in essence, living in our own little illusion, and in our own little reality, in our own little thoughts. This is a nasty distortion. Well, they all are, but this one I like more than others. Number 8 is should statements. You try to motivate yourself with shoulds and shouldn'ts as if you had to be whipped and punished before you could be expected to do anything. Musts and oughts are also offenders. The emotional consequence is guilt. When you direct should statements towards others, you feel anger, frustration, and resentment. Albert Ellis, the grandfather of cognitive psychology, called this masturbations. I must do this, you must do this, we all have to do this. Shoulds and must create a lot of emotional turmoil in our lives, and we really need to knock it off, When the reality of your own behavior falls short of your expectations or what it should be, you think, you create self-loathing, shame, guilt, regret, lots of those horrible negative emotions. When other people fall short of your expectations, you feel bitter and resentful and sometimes downright self-righteous. My mother-in-law should be nicer to me. Why? You know, my stepkids really should respect me more. Why? Whatever you think the answers are to those questions, they're simply your own perception of what should be. You know that you can't control anything except your own thoughts. So why are you trying to control their thinking and their feeling? It's only going to cause you emotional turmoil. So you just have to let it go. You got to let it be. I always ask the question, do you want to be happy or do you want to be right? Don't say both, because you can't have both. Not all the time. Sometimes you can. Labeling and mislabeling. This is an extreme form of overgeneralization. Instead of describing your error, you attach a negative label to yourself. I'm a loser. When someone else's behavior rubs you the wrong way, you attach a negative label to him. He's a damn louse. I didn't write this. David Burns did. Mislabeling involves describing an event with language that is highly colored and emotionally loaded. So there's a good chance when you're describing an error or a mistake that you made, you start the sentence with, I am blank. You're labeling or mislabeling. We can spend the rest of the day on this distortion alone. I'm fat, I'm lazy, I'm not very smart, I'm not good at this, I'm not good at that. I'm a failure at investing. Instead of saying, I invested in the wrong stock. We do this to our children all the time. Why are you such a whiner? Instead of saying, please don't whine. Mothers will say, don't be so stupid. You're such a brat. You're such a bad boy. You better be careful, because if you call them by these names enough, they're going to believe your worst projection. And your distortion is going to become their permanent beliefs. The last one, personalization. You see yourself as the cause of some negative external event, which in fact you were not responsible for. This distortion is the mother of all guilt. You assume responsibility for something that really isn't your fault. So you arbitrarily conclude that what happened was your fault and it reflects your inadequacy. We all have at least one friend like this. You know who I'm talking about. You have one. One of the best examples that I can give you, especially for parents that have kids, they say, my kids didn't turn out the way I wanted because I did something wrong. This distortion causes you to carry the whole weight of the entire world on your shoulders. You know, we of course as parents have to take responsibility for our actions, but we can't assume that we have total control over our children, or anybody else for that matter. You know that the only thing that you can control is your thoughts. We don't have control over anything except our thoughts. We only can exercise influence. Stuart Smalley, Saturday Night Live, he was the character of Al Franken, and he's the poster child of cognitive distortions. His affirmations of, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and by golly, people really, really like me, was his attempt at getting rid of the cognitive distortion of I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, and geez, you know, people really, really don't like me. He's suffering from the three basic common themes of negative belief system: the need to be achieved, the need to be accepted and loved, and the need for control.